March 13th, 1942. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Station HIPO. The room hums with the sound of teletype machines and the slow, methodical tapping of typewriter keys. Ceiling fans stir the thick tropical air, barely cutting through the heat. Rows of crypt analysts in khaki shirts and rolled-up sleeves hunch over tables littered with cipher sheets, frequency charts, and fragments of intercepted messages. Commander Joseph J. Rochefort paces between them, a pipe clamped in his teeth, his rumpled uniform jacket draped over a chair. His expression is unreadable, a mix of exhaustion and focus. For months, he and his small team at Station HIPO, the U.S. Navy's top code-breaking unit in the Pacific, have been chasing ghosts inside strings of meaningless letters. A clatter of paper breaks the silence. One of his men, Lieutenant Thomas Dyer, looks up from his decoding board. "Another intercept from Tokyo to the fleet commands," he says. "Designation JN-25. Rochefort walks over, squinting at the cipher groups printed across the sheet. To anyone else, it looks like gibberish. Random sequences of numbers and code words, constantly shifting according to secret additive tables. But to the men of HIPO, this is the enemy's heartbeat. "Get it to Agnes," Rochefort mutters, "and tell her to flag anything that mentions AF. It's been turning up a lot lately." "AF, sir?" Dyer asks. "We don't know what that is yet." Rochefort takes the paper, taps it with his finger, and says quietly, "No, but the Japanese seem to think it's important." He glances up at the wall clock. 11:20 a.m. The fan hums overhead, the smell of ink and coffee heavy in the air. Across the Pacific, unseen but ever present, the Imperial Japanese Navy is planning its next strike. And in this small, windowless room on Oahu, a handful of American linguists and mathematicians are racing to find out where. For months, since the devastation of Pearl Harbor, the United States has been on the defensive. Wake Island, Guam, the Philippines. Each battle has ended the same way, in defeat. The Japanese seem unstoppable, their navy extending across the Pacific like a tightening noose. But what Tokyo doesn't know is that the Americans have already broken part of their secret. In the months before the war, Army and Navy intelligence began working to crack Japan's diplomatic ciphers. The so-called Purple Code, used by Tokyo's foreign ministry. It wasn't enough to read every word, but it gave Washington a window into Japan's intentions. Now, in early 1942, Station HIPO is tackling something far more dangerous. JN-25, the operational code used by the Imperial Japanese Navy. The challenge is staggering. Each message is encrypted by a system of 5-digit groups layered with additives that change daily. To break it, Rochefort's team must sift through endless streams of intercepted transmissions, comparing patterns, analyzing repetition, and rebuilding codebooks fragment by fragment. The men work in shifts around the clock. Some sleep on cots in the hallway. Others scribble notes on cigarette wrappers. Outside, the war moves relentlessly forward. But inside HIPO, time feels frozen. Each breakthrough measured not in hours, but in lines of numbers decoded. April 20th, 1942. Rochefort leans over a map of the Pacific pinned to the wall. Red pins mark Japanese bases from Rabaul to Truk to Kwajalein. He circles a blank patch of ocean roughly midway between Hawaii and Japan. The tiny speck of Midway Atoll. "We keep seeing AF in proximity to references about carriers and refueling points," he tells his deputy, Lieutenant Commander Edwin Layton, Nimitz's intelligence officer. "Whatever AF is, they're sending supplies, weather reports, and construction updates. That's a base." Layton frowns. "Could be Johnston, or maybe the Aleutians." Rochefort shakes his head. "No. The Japanese already have code designations for those. I think AF is Midway." Layton exhales. "If that's true, then they're going to hit it. And soon." Rochefort nods. "Tell Admiral Nimitz we'll prove it." He turns back to his desk. The hum of machines continues. The mechanical rhythm of a secret war fought in silence. Every letter intercepted, every code cracked, could shift the balance of power in the Pacific. But across the ocean, in Tokyo, Japan's naval intelligence dismisses the possibility that their codes could ever be broken. Their system, they believe, is mathematically unassailable. To them, the Americans are blind. A crippled fleet still reeling from Pearl Harbor. They have no idea that, in a small basement in Pearl Harbor, the Americans are already reading their mail. And soon, that invisible advantage will set a trap that will change the course of the entire war. May 1942. Pearl Harbor, Station HIPO. The ceiling fans spin lazily overhead, pushing the humid air around the cramped intelligence room. Cigarette smoke drifts between desks stacked with decoded fragments. Commander Joseph Rochefort, still in his signature bathrobe and slippers, a habit that's become part of his legend, leans over a cluster of analysts huddled around a new intercept. "It's from Combined Fleet Headquarters," says Lieutenant R.E. Heinel, pointing to the message taped on the wall. They're referencing Operation MI again. And there it is, AF. They're preparing a strike force against AF. Rochefort exhales through his teeth. Same as before. Transports, carriers, fuel depots. Whatever AF is, it's next. He glances at the map pinned to the wall. Tiny paper flags mark every known Japanese base and carrier route. There, in the dead center of the Pacific, he taps one finger on a dot labeled Midway Atoll. "I'll bet my life it's this one." Lieutenant Commander Edwin Layton, Nimitz's intelligence chief, folds his arms. But we can't be sure. Washington's analysts think it might be the Aleutians. The code designators aren't consistent. Rochefort nods, but his jaw tightens. Washington's OP-20G, the Navy's main code-breaking office, often dismissed HIPO's field analyses as guesswork. But Rochefort knows they're close. One more proof and the whole operation will make sense. He picks up the message again. They're planning something big. 4 carriers at least. We can't let this be another Pearl Harbor. May 19th, 1942. Admiral Chester W. Otto Nimitz's office, Pearl Harbor. Rochefort and Layton stand before the tall, soft-spoken admiral. The walls are lined with maps, their edges curling under the Hawaiian humidity. Nimitz listens quietly as Rochefort explains the latest decrypts, references to AF suffering water shortages and the scheduling of carrier groups to strike it. "Midway," Rochefort says. "That's their target." Nimitz strokes his chin. "How certain are you, Commander?" 80%, Rochefort admits, "but I can make it 100. He glances at Layton, then smiles faintly. "With your permission, Admiral, I'd like to bait the hook." Nimitz's eyebrow lifts. "Go on." "We'll have Midway send out an uncoded radio message. Something ordinary, believable, something only the Japanese would overhear." "What kind of message?" Nimitz asks. "Something like, Midway's freshwater condenser is broken. We're short on water." Nimitz leans back, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "And if the Japanese report that AF is short on water, then we'll know," Rochefort finishes. "We'll know they're talking about Midway." Nimitz nods once. "Make it happen." May 22nd, 1942. Midway Atoll. A routine transmission crackles across the Pacific. "To Commander-in-Chief, Pacific Fleet, from Midway. Freshwater condenser broken. Stop. Water supplies running low. Stop. Request immediate shipment of desalination equipment. Stop." The message is sent in plain English, completely uncoded. A morsel meant for enemy ears. And sure enough, less than 48 hours later, an intercepted Japanese transmission reaches Station HIPO. The cipher team works in silence, pencils scratching as the text unfolds. Finally, a translator looks up, eyes wide. It says, "AF is short of water." For a moment, the entire room is silent. Then slowly, Rochefort grins. "That's it. We've got them." He rushes the report to Nimitz's office. "Confirmed," he says simply. "AF equals Midway. They're coming, and we know when." Nimitz wastes no time. Orders go out across the Pacific. Prepare for battle. The carriers USS Enterprise, USS Hornet, and the hastily repaired USS Yorktown are recalled to Pearl Harbor. Pilots are briefed. Aircraft are rearmed. Patrol boats fan out across the atoll's lagoon. In Tokyo, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, finalizes his grand plan. A surprise strike to lure what's left of the American fleet into the open and crush it. Confident in their secure codes, Japanese planners remain oblivious to the fact that their entire operation is already known to the enemy. Rochefort watches as the signals pour in, encrypted schedules, fleet orders, and even Yamamoto's personal messages. He can see the plan taking shape like a ghost emerging from fog. The first mobile force, under Admiral Nagumo, will strike Midway on June 4th. A second fleet will wait in ambush to destroy the American carriers. Everything, every name, every ship, every timing is now clear. At Station HIPO, the tension breaks in applause. They've done it. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, the U.S. Navy knows exactly when and where Japan will attack. But for Rochefort, the celebration is brief. He looks at the decoded message again, the ink still fresh. 4 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. He knows what that means. If they fail, the Pacific is lost. And if they succeed, the war might just turn. June 3rd, 1942, North Pacific. The ocean stretches endlessly in every direction, a vast, heaving wilderness of water and wind. The early morning light glints off the decks of the USS Enterprise, cutting through fog that smells faintly of fuel and salt. Below decks, men are eating in silence, their faces drawn, their nerves tight. Somewhere beyond the horizon, they know, the Imperial Japanese Navy is coming. 4 of its most powerful carriers, the same that burned Pearl Harbor 6 months ago. But this time, the Americans aren't running blind. Thanks to the men of Station HIPO, Admiral Chester Nimitz knows exactly when the Japanese will strike. On the Enterprise's flag bridge, Rear Admiral Raymond A. Spruance stands beside his operations officer, scanning the sea through binoculars. The radio crackles with reports from long-range patrols. "Contact reports negative so far, sir," says a voice. Spruance lowers his glasses. "Keep looking. They're out there." Behind him, a signalman pins a fresh intercept to the plotting board. An encoded transmission from Nagumo's fleet, decrypted by HIPO barely an hour ago. It's confirmation. The Japanese carriers are less than 300 miles northwest of Midway Atoll. Spruance's jaw tightens. That's it. The trap is set. June 4th, 1942. 0430 hours. Midway Atoll. The first light of dawn reveals a sky streaked with orange and blue. On Midway's narrow runway, ground crews scramble to ready the island's defenses. Rows of Marine Corps F-4F Wildcats and SBD Dauntless bombers lined wing to wing. Inside the command bunker, Lieutenant Commander Logan Ramsey peers into a radar scope glowing faint green in the dark. Bogey inbound, bearing 320, large formation, range 93 miles. He grabs the field phone. Air raid warning. Red, this is not a drill. Moments later, sirens wail across the atoll. Marines run to their stations as anti-aircraft guns swivel toward the horizon. High above the clouds, 108 Japanese carrier planes, Aichi D-3A dive bombers and Nakajima B-5N torpedo bombers, escorted by Zero fighters, streak toward Midway. They come in low, sun flashing off their wings. The first bombs hit the airfield at 0620. Explosions rip through the sand, scattering debris and flaming fuel across the runways. The ground shakes. Inside his bunker, Ramsey shouts into the radio. "Message to Task Force 16. Enemy carriers sighted. Repeat, enemy carriers sighted." Far out at sea, that message reaches the Enterprise and Yorktown. Spruance reads the coordinates and nods. "That's our target. Launch everything we've got. 700 hours. North of Midway, the carrier decks come alive. Engines roar. Deckhands in colored vests signal to pilots. The smell of aviation gasoline fills the air. From the Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown, dozens of bombers and torpedo planes lift into the morning sky. Devastators, Dauntlesses, and Wildcats, forming a web of contrails against the sun. The crews know their odds. They'll be flying hundreds of miles over open ocean with only a rough idea of where the enemy is. Spruance watches them vanish into the haze. "God go with them," he says quietly. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battle, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, aboard the carrier Akagi, scans the same morning sky. His first strike on Midway has been successful, but not decisive. His staff urges him to prepare a second wave to finish the island. Then a scout plane radios in. Enemy ships sighted to the east. Nagumo freezes. Enemy ships? He hesitates. A fatal moment of indecision. He orders his planes below deck to rearm, switching from land bombs to torpedoes for ship attack. Below the hangar deck, fuel lines snake across the floor. Bombs are stacked on trolleys, fuses attached. The air is thick with gasoline vapor, and that's when fate and American code breakers close the trap. 10-20 hours. After hours of searching, a group of U.S. Navy SBD Dauntless dive bombers from the Enterprise spots Nagumo's fleet through a break in the clouds. 4 Japanese carriers glimmer far below, their decks crowded with refueling aircraft. Squadron leader Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey squints through his canopy, jaw tight. There they are. Dive! The sky erupts. From 20,000 feet, the Dauntlesses peel over into screaming dives, engines howling, dive brakes glowing red-hot. The Japanese look up too late, alarms blaring, sailors scrambling for their guns. Bombs fall like thunderbolts. At 10:22, a 1,000-pound bomb slams into Akagi's flight deck, detonating among fueled aircraft. A second hits Kaga, then Soryu. Flames leap skyward. The explosions merge into one rolling inferno. Japanese sailors throw themselves overboard as the carriers burn, ammunition cooking off in steady, thunderous bursts. Within minutes, 3 of the 4 carriers, the pride of the Imperial Navy, are doomed. From the air, McCluskey watches the destruction below, speechless. His gunner murmurs through the intercom, "We got 'em all." Back on the Enterprise, cheers erupt. Pilots returning from the mission slap each other on the back, grinning through exhaustion and disbelief. By day's end, the 4th carrier, Hiryu, would also be found and destroyed, its crew fighting to the last. The Japanese fleet, once the terror of the Pacific, lies shattered and burning, its air power gutted in a single day. And it all began with a few words decrypted from a coded message. AF is short on water. That night, as the fires of 4 carriers light the dark sea, Admiral Nimitz receives the report at Pearl Harbor. He reads it once, then sets it down gently. The battle, he says quietly, has turned the tide. And in a quiet office beneath the same base, Joseph Rochefort and his team at Station HYPO listen to the news over the radio, exhausted and unshaven. Someone pours coffee into tin cups. "They'll never believe it happened because of us," one of them says. Rochefort smiles faintly. "That's all right," he says, "as long as they know it happened." The code that Japan thought unbreakable, the one they called Purple, had given the United States not just a victory, but a second chance in the Pacific. The message had been clear all along. The trick was learning to listen.